Before we get started, this video was Okay, so this is both a subscribe star request and a personal pick. You see, this is actually one of my mom's favorite movies, and her birthday is around this time frame. So I decided to win some brownie points and cover this as an unconventional gift. This also means I'm going to try to hold off on swearing, so don't go being potty mouth sticks, you assholes. Shit.
There are two kinds of people in the world, my friend. Those with a rope around their neck and the people who have the job of doing the cutting.
$1,000 is a lot of money.
The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is a movie that barely needs an introduction, if at all. This is easily one of the most famous movies of all time, not just for westerns, but films at large. It's really not an exaggeration to say Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is essentially neck and neck with Star Wars for notoriety. It's been referenced, parodied, and outright plagiarized from more times than anyone can count, and it continues to influence media to this very day. Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was created by Sergio Leone, who was already building a reputation for making spaghetti westerns. For those unaware, spaghetti westerns is a colloquial term for cheap western films created in Europe, specifically places like Italy and Spain. When they first started, it was seen as a cheap rear killer. You're doing low-budget cowboy schlock that would never really go anywhere.
Well, then what's the problem? I gotta do fucking Italian goddamn movies, that's a fucking problem! Come on.
Hell, a common point in spaghetti westerns is that all the actors involved would record lines in their own languages and just be dubbed over in English later. So that was seen as an extremely amateur way to do things because how dare everybody not speak the same language and be able to bounce off each other's pace. And honestly, this is funny to think about since spaghetti westerns became so famous that they overshadowed actual westerns made in America. You see, on top of being made in a completely foreign culture, spaghetti westerns tended to deviate from the traditional tropes that American westerns used. Traditional westerns were things like Gunsmoke, The Lone Ranger, True Grit, very traditional stories of good rising above evil. These can be fun by themselves, and a lot of the time would try to adapt well-known stories from the Old West, even if details are completely exaggerated and played up to downright ridiculous degrees. There's a point to pay tribute to this point of history and elevate it into its own mythology. The Lone Ranger, in particular, adapted the history of Bass Reeves, one of the most famous sheriffs from the Old West due to his record of arresting hundreds of criminals. Spaghetti westerns played with a different vibe, to add a bit more spice to the formula. Spaghetti westerns tend to forego the usual idea of good versus evil, and focused on much more flawed characters with very selfish motivations. Sergio Leone especially used this method with his world-famous Dollars trilogy, Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Each one is a story of greed and violence, and they are shameless about it. Now, Fistful of Dollars is famous in its own right since it's basically shameless plagiarism. Alright, that's an exaggeration. It's essentially an Old West remake of the Akira Kurosawa classic Yojimbo, a story about a samurai who travels to a village controlled by two rival gangs, who he manipulates into fighting each other for his own gain. Fistful of Dollars is the exact same story. Clint Eastwood's character, the man with no name, shows up to town to find it controlled by two rival gangs. He weasels his way into their good graces and realizes they can make major money by stealing the gold that one of the rival gangs robbed from a military convoy. While this is very much inspired by Yojimbo, I will say Fistful of Dollars does more than enough to differentiate itself from the original once you reach the halfway mark. It starts developing its own story and arcs for the characters, and the showdown at the very end is radically different from Yojimbo's. But Leone was successfully sued by Kurosawa for plagiarism, so we have to officially refer to this as stolen. Sucks, but it is what it is. The next one is For a Few Dollars More, which is completely original and where Leone was starting to form his own identity with the trilogy. It follows a bounty hunter played by Lee Van Cleef, who's on the hunt for a psychotic outlaw. He joins up with Clint Eastwood's character, a different man from Fistful of Dollars that nobody would blame you for thinking he's the same guy, and the two try to find the outlaw before he wreaks more havoc. You would think this would be more in line with traditional westerns since it's about an honorable bounty hunter chasing down a psychotic criminal. You're kind of right, as Lee Van Cleef's character is leagues more honorable and moral than Eastwood's character, but you find that he himself has his own reasons to hunt his target that go beyond law and order. But you guys aren't here for the whole trilogy. That doesn't mean they won't be covered, just that we're not going into them right now. This video is about Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, which is more than enough for this. The first two chapters of the trilogy set the stage for for this film, which can only be described as an actual epic. It's over 2.5 hours long and tells the story of a massive journey embarked on by 3 distinct men. The good, also known as Blondie, played by Clint Eastwood, the bad, also known as Angel Eyes, played by Lee Van Cleef, and the ugly, also known as Tuco, played by Eli Wallach. Each man is a different flavor of criminal outlaw in the Old West. Blondie and Tuco are scam artists that run a gig collecting bounties on Tuco's head, then breaking him out of custody, ensuring the bounty goes up and continuing the scam. Angel Eyes is a ruthless assassin that completes any job he's paid to do, only caring about the money and unafraid to kill anybody in his way. All 3 men learn about a stash of Confederate gold stolen by one of its soldiers, buried in a cemetery called Sad Hill, and they trip over each other trying to get the gold for themselves, screwing each other over at every chance, as each man knows their own detail about the location of the gold, but nobody has the full story. Angel Eyes learns of the gold's existence first, where the man who stole it is supposed to be going, but he doesn't know where it's at or where it's buried. Tuco stumbles into the man who stole the gold and learns where it's supposed to be, but he doesn't know exactly where it's buried. Blondie learns the exact location, but he doesn't know where the cemetery's at. So you have this tense mind game among the characters as each one's trying to manipulate the other or force them into revealing their part of the location. But nobody's budging. Right out the gate, it should be said that the characters in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly are very well written and well performed. It's easy to praise Clint Eastwood's Blondie, as this was the role that would go on to define his career. He's referred to as the good, but that doesn't mean he's actually, a hero. The guy's a scam artist who's willing to shoot somebody without a second thought. It's just that compared to Angel Eyes or Tuco, then yeah, he's got a way better moral compass. He's got a lot of charisma as Blondie. You can tell he's the smartest of the 3, always having some kind of quip or observation, and he can figure out details that matter and leverage them to settle beef with various characters. That's how he's able to actually win Tuco over to his side, who he actually tried to screw over in the beginning of the film, which ended up almost killing him. Still, he's not an idiot, and he figures out Tuco's nature very fast, using the guy's greed and hot-headed nature to his advantage.
I'll keep the money and you can have the rope.
Tuco is the ugly, since he's the loud and boisterous one of the trio. The dude is an outright pig of a human being, shamelessly greedy, short-tempered, and ends up getting himself into the most trouble. The movie begins with him being attacked by bounty hunters, but that doesn't mean he's a complete fool. He's clever in his own way, since he's an experienced bandit, and he can be surprisingly manipulative, able to get other characters to do his bidding, though he's not shy about not giving a single care whether they live or die. Tuco also has a lot of personality. He probably has the most of the whole group. He has tons of quotes and fun moments that end up stealing the show, to the point that you can essentially view him as the protagonist if you want. The movie starts and ends on him. Eli Wallach clearly had boatloads of fun playing the scumbag that's just proud of who he is. He never moralizes or pretends he's doing the right thing. He's greedy and he wants the money. He will get that money no matter what it takes. Any alliances he builds are purely short-term relationships, since he's already formulating ideas on how to screw them over first chance he gets.
Even when Judas hanged himself, there was a storm too.
That could be cannon fire.
Cannon fire or storm, it's all the same to you.
Now, Angel Eyes is the most understated of the 3. The bad is an interesting descriptor, since really he's not much different from the other 2. He's a ruthless killer, yes, but so are the others. Funny enough, he's probably the most easily approachable. He's shown multiple times talking his way through situations. He can even be friendly in his own way. A total chameleon in comparison to how blunt Tuco and Blondie can be. It's just that when it's time to draw guns, he doesn't hesitate for a second to kill everyone in the room. And when you do piss him off, he gets very unpleasant. It's revealed that he does know the other 2 as well. All the men have some form of history with each other. Not exactly friends, but they are friendly.
But you know the pity is when I'm paid. I always follow my job through.
But when the gold comes into play, they're all gunning for each other's throats. There's just this kind of mutual understanding that no tactics are off limits. Whoever gets the gold first is the winner. The fun is seeing how these 3 uniquely terrible men all rush for this grand prize, even if they're criminals who are only out for themselves. If anything, especially because of that, it's basically one big game to them. Yeah, the stakes are life and death, but the characters are well aware and accept it, because the idea of $200,000 in gold is just too good to let go. And this is in 1860s money, so that is a massive payday. Gold is a powerful motivator in the movie. Every situation revolves around money in some way. Angel Eyes is a killer for hire, Blondie and Tuco are scam artists, the whole story is about hunting down the gold that was stolen by a Confederate soldier that wanted to abandon the war. Hell, the whole beef with Blondie and Tuco starts because he tried to leave the guy for dead, thinking Tuco's bounty would never rise high enough to justify the effort. Money is a big factor of the story, and it being such a focus is what led to the 3 films to be called the Dollars Trilogy, showing just how maniacal and underhanded criminals can become in the pursuit for larger and larger paydays. heydays. It's to the point that even though a large plot point is the brewing presence of the Civil War in the region, none of the protagonists ever care about that. If anything, they see it as both an inconvenience and a chance to get closer to the gold. They don't care about the larger world or civilization. They're fully self-centered, and any situation that isn't in their immediate focus just seems to come out of nowhere. Now, there's a lot of other details to talk about with this movie. The cinematography is gorgeous for one. You get tons of wide shots showing off the landscape. While this film was shot in Spain, it's able to emulate the American Southwest flawlessly. To the point that there's no doubt people out there that have probably went their whole life thinking this was filmed close to the Mexican border. There's tons of shots that have been recreated through the years, to the point that the visual style of the movie went on to be the DNA of almost every modern Western sense. Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name has been recreated countless times. The quiet, intense gunslinger that has a silver tongue. Anybody that's played the Red Dead series knows you can essentially play a drinking game with how many different references those games shove into them. And that's not talking about stuff like Call of Juarez, Gun, so on and so forth. The mere look of the movie is one of the most famous aspects. It's not even mentioning the score by Ennio Morricone. The score of Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is so iconic that it, once again, shaped the landscape for film scores since. For the time, it was an unconventional score. Most other film scores relied on classic big band music. Trombones, string instruments, the epic music to elevate scenes higher. This score, on the other hand, is very experimental. It has electric guitars, whistles, all these sort of out there elements that differentiate it from the crowd, which is funny to say because the classic wah 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 yell is referenced almost more often than any actual scene in the film. Just hearing it sets the tone, which was the point. Much like Conan the Barbarian, this is a film that can double as almost a cinematic opera in places. The score is a character itself, telling you right from the get-go the feel of the story, and even having scenes set to the pace of the music. It's a well-known story that during production, Sergio Leone would have speakers playing the music during filming, and they would time cuts to certain parts of the songs, which is why some takes can go on for so long. The final duel has so much build-up, specifically because Leone was waiting for the exact perfect time in the music to time the draw. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly without the music would be half the film it ended up being. It's part of why it's so easy to watch. You enjoy the music and it lets you soak into the scene, so then you're right on board for the rest of it. The scene where Tuco is running around the cemetery to Ecstasy of Gold is one of the most exciting scenes in the movie. It's just a guy running around aimlessly in the middle of a graveyard, but the context of the scene and the music all come together in this almost magical way. It's exciting, it's intense, it's almost kind of beautiful. The character spent so long looking for this cemetery, and there's Tuco, inches away from victory. The score is triumphant. It swells so much that by the end, it's a full-on orchestra performance, and it's just this middle-aged man stumbling around a cemetery. You know you've got something special when a scene of just a guy looking at gravestones is one of the biggest payoffs of the story. It shows not just how far they've come, but also Tuco's pace in the graveyard. It starts off slow, almost subtle as he's right outside, but the closer he gets to the center, the more it builds, like it's leading him closer to the grave with the gold in it. By the time he's right on top of the grave, it's bombastic, cheering him on and celebrating his victory. You can feel how close he is, and it's almost teasing the audience. He just needs to find the grave, but it's a needle in a haystack, and needs to hurry because Angel Eyes and Blondie are right behind him. It's a downright legendary moment, to the point that it lives on almost independently of the movie. This song in particular has been covered in live orchestra performances and continues to be to this very day. I really can't stress how much this movie still influences culture. Not just westerns, by the way. It's been referenced in everything from cartoons to video games to music to other movies. And not in small ways. You have a full-blown Korean remake called The Good, the Bad, and the Weird, which came out in 2008. And it is a full-on remake, as it follows three criminals in 1930s Southeast Asia also looking for a cache of money. Kind of funny how a trilogy that started from remaking an East Asian film was itself capped off by a remake from East Asia. You also have Quentin Tarantino's Western films, Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight, which pay endless tribute to Sergio Leone and his films. Hateful Eight in particular using tracks from Ennio Morricone for the score in places. The ending of Reservoir Dogs is said to be sort of a tribute to the final duel in the film, and one that might have flown under the radar for people is John Wick 3. The scene where he's building a revolver is being chased is a downright shot-for-shot recreation of the gun store scene where Tuco builds his revolver. They even accentuate it with a guitar twang. And it even kinda goes for almost a dual tribute, since the scene can also be seen as a remake of when Blondie had to put his gun back together before Tuco's guys can burst into the hotel room. It's a very clear tribute to the film one way or the other. Sergio Leone's legacy cannot be understated. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly continues to influence media, and it probably will continue to do so for a very long time. Stephen King outright said that it was a massive inspiration for the Dark Tower series, with Roland's character essentially being based off Blondie. I already mentioned the Red Dead games, which can't try harder to emulate Sergio's spaghetti westerns.
I got me one of them Williamson boys. I got me one of them idiots who give marshals a bad name.
Bands from Motorhead to Metallica have played the film score during concerts. There's even a documentary you can watch that's about a town that discovers they were right next to the cemetery they used to film the movie, and they decide as a sort of community project to rebuild it in tribute to the film, even putting on a local festival where the whole town can have a large viewing of the film. It's a great story and you should watch the documentary. It's called Sad Hill Unearthed. It actually inspired plans to rebuild the Betterville prisoner camp as well, which could be cool to see if they get it done. It really is interesting to see such reverence for the film almost a full 60 years since it's come out. It continues to cement its position as one of the definitive movies out there, and I can't hesitate to recommend it highly enough. Some might see it as just a cheesy western, but there's legitimate refinement here. It's something that defined westerns since its release, and it's not going away anytime soon, nor should it. Hopefully this inspired you guys to finally sit down and give it a shot if you haven't seen it. I've kind of been operating off the idea that everyone's seen it already, because it's hard to avoid. There's so many different releases, upscales, festivals that show the movie off. This is far from dead by any means. It really wasn't an exaggeration to say this is almost as iconic as Star Wars. No, it has not been as whored out as Star Wars, and we should thank God every single day for that. But regardless, it's something that became a landmark, and if you consider yourself a fan of movies, you should sit down and give this a watch. I've been loosey-goosey about spoilers simply because you should just watch this. It's fantastic. There's so many different avenues to see it, and something that you need to sit down and go through to understand yourself. Yeah, there's a lot of details that you can leave in and talk about that maybe to some people would count as spoilers, but to me, it's more about just watching it. It's not about knowing what happens. I mean, the final duel scene's been referenced way too many times, so you kind of already know all three of them get to the graveyard. But the whole point is, you need to sit down, see that play out, and feel the excitement when it happens. When you get to that final showdown where they're staring each other down for minutes, you will actually get it. You will understand why that clicks with so many people, and it's been referenced so many different times. Still, hopefully it becomes a favorite of yours. But do you know who aren't a bunch of amoral outlaws out for themselves? Gamer Subs, use code TAL at checkout for 10% off your next order. It's super good, super great, it's awesome. They have new designs, they have new shirts. New designs, new shirts, they're in neon color. Use the code, use the code, use the code or I'm kicking the chair out from under you. Use the code. This is about all I can say about Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I can't stretch this out for too long because I don't want to just explain the movie to you guys. You're supposed to sit down and watch it. That's the fun part. Until next time, please remember to like, comment, subscribe. See you guys.
You see, in this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, and those who dig.
Hey, loser. Do you want a shirt? Do you want a t-shirt? I have shirts now. Look in the description for a link to a t-shirt you can buy. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll kill your family. If you don't buy the t-shirt, I'll poison your dog. If you don't buy the t-shirt, you're going to be the only person in town that does not have a t-shirt. Everyone's going to look at you funny. There's going to be social consequences to not having one of these t-shirts. I'm now making express threats of violence against you if you do not buy my t-shirt. I will call the police, tell them how you're not buying my shirt. They're going to plant crack in your house, and they're going to arrest you and then beat you up in a jail cell. Buy my shirt.
And now I know the only compass that I need is the one that leads back to you. And I know the only compass that I need is the one leads back to you. And the burning blisters on my feet will call to hold me as I'm close to fall. Away from the home of your arms I stray, off the radar and into harm's way. Now I know the only compass that I need is the one that leads back to you.